along as I go over this document called Weighing Sources. To weigh a source is to ask yourself how believable it is. Another word for believable that we use a lot when we talk about research is credible. The word incredible literally means not believable. Credible is believable. If you find a source credible, you're going to give it a lot of weight. And if you find a source incredible, you're not going to give it very much weight. And there are some questions you need to ask yourself to decide whether a source is very credible or not very credible, whether you should give it a lot of weight or not a lot of weight. The first question is, when was it published? And you're going to give it a lot of weight if it's one of the most recent sources you found. You're going to not give it that much weight if it's one of the oldest sources you found. A really old source doesn't mean it's completely unbelievable, but you'll give an older source overall less weight than you'll give a more recent source. Because in different fields, new information is always being discovered. Another thing you want to ask yourself is, what are this source's sources? And it's good. You should give a source a lot of weight if it cites, C-I-T-E-S, many other sources. So if you look in the back of the book or at the end of the article and you see a list of all the other sources that this source used, in other words, you see a bibliography or a works cited, that's a really good sign. You're going to give the source less weight if it only cites a few other sources or if it doesn't cite any other sources. If this source doesn't tell you where it got its information, you're going to give it a little less weight. Ask yourself now, is this author biased? To be biased is to unfairly have an opinion about an issue. So here you want to think about the tone of the writing, what the author's voice sounds like. If the author seems like they're presenting only facts and they don't seem to be expressing an opinion one way or the other, you're going to give the source a lot of weight. If the author seems to have opinions or to push a particular view, that's the time you'll give the source less weight. You next want to ask yourself, is this author knowledgeable? Does this person know a lot about this topic? A good sign, this is 2 words, is if the author has a graduate degree. Graduate degree. And a graduate degree is a degree you get after you go to regular college. So a master's, MA, or a doctorate, PhD. Or if the author has published other texts on this subject. So maybe the person didn't necessarily go to graduate school to study this topic, but the person has been writing about it for a really long time and they've learned about it that way. Those are both good signs, and they would make you give a source more weight. What would make you give a source less weight is if the author has no degree in this field, or, this is really bad, if there's no information at all given about the author, that's usually a bad sign. Because if the author was an expert, the publisher would really want you to know it. That's something they would want to brag about. Now ask yourself, who else agrees with this author? Sometimes you'll see this on the flap if it's a book, or on the back if it's a book. If there's a respected expert is this blank, in the field who agrees with this author, someone else saying, this book is amazing, etc., etc. Or if somebody from a university or from a college agrees with this author, that's a good sign. Universities and colleges keep their reputations based on being honest and being correct. So someone who represents a university or a college is generally not going to support a piece of writing that is full of bull. Now, if you look at who agrees with the author and you see that somebody from a religious or a political group agrees with them, or somebody who's going to make money from the ideas. So in other words, if it's a book about Apple and the CEO of Apple is on the back of the book saying, this book is amazing, that's not such a good sign. You want to give it less weight. Now, sometimes there's no information at all about who agrees with the author. And in that case, you can't really consider this question. The last question to ask is, who paid to publish this information? Like, who's producing this website or who's publishing this book? If it's a college or university, good sign. If it's a big publishing house that you've heard of, like Random House, Or if you're not sure if it's a big publishing house, you could just Google the name. Or Scholastic, also well known. Or if it's a respected institution like National Geographic, it's been around a long time, everybody knows about it. Those are all good signs. If the author themselves paid to publish it, or if a political group paid to publish it, or if a religious group paid to publish it, that's not a good sign. Or, here are these last blanks, if a for-profit company, for-profit, P-R-O-F-I-T, paid to publish it, that's a bad sign. A for-profit company is a company that exists to make money. That's most companies. So Apple, for example. If Apple paid to publish a book that says Apple is great, that's not a good sign. All right, so you're going to ask yourself all these questions. Now, and then you weigh them when you're done asking the questions. So if one or two of these answers are not ideal, that doesn't mean you completely ignore the source. You're just going to weigh the number of answers you have in the not so credible column against the number of answers you have in the credible column. And you're going to overall ask yourself, does it seem more credible? Should I give it a lot of weight? Or does it seem more not credible? Should I give it not too much weight? And if most of your answers are in this column, probably don't use that source. If most of your answers are in this column, that's a good source. That's it.